Sometimes in our web applications, we need a process to run in the background continuously. Turns out ASP.NET Core makes that pretty easy. Let's mash on that.
Hello everybody and welcome to another fun-filled episode of the ASP.NET Monsters. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at background tasks.
Yeah, so this is something that actually came up for me at work where I needed to integrate with a system that the only way it could communicate with me with our system was to send messages over the local network. And that works for internal applications, but for my web app, that was a bit problematic. I can't just listen for UDP messages within the browser. So got to thinking about it and thought, well, it looks like I'm probably going to need a way within my web server to listen to those messages on like a background thread of some sort, and then have a way to just send that over to the client, to the browser through my web app. So did a little bit of research, and turns out that use case is handled quite nicely within ASP.NET Core. And just going to walk you through the process of adding that type of what they call a background service inside of an ASP.NET Core app. And I'm actually going to use ASP.NET Core 3. I'm on the preview here, but this exists in 2.2 as well. Some of the mechanics are just slightly different, but the concepts are all the same. So I'm just going to create a new web application here. And so it's just a standard Razor Pages app here with an index homepage and the usual program and startup. And what we're going to do is just create a new class here called my UDP listener. I'm going to have that inherit from something called the background service. This is a base class that's provided by ASP.NET Core that does a little bit of the plumbing for you to get this going. So it's an abstract class, and you have to implement a particular method here called execute async. And this is the method that's going to run in a background thread on our web server. And this guy's going to have a couple things here. So initially a UDP client that it needs. Call that client. And when we execute our background service here, we're going to create a new instance of the UDP client listening on whatever port we happen to want to listen to. I'll call it 9000. And then we're just going to execute a loop here that says keep going forever, basically, until this cancellation token that gets passed in signals that cancellation has been requested. And that's basically just giving us a way to gracefully shut down this background service if we need to. In our case, there isn't too much we need to do other than maybe dispose of that UDP client just to free up any resources that it might have been hanging on to. And then within a try catch, because an error could happen here and we don't want to just crash that background task, we actually want to keep this running. So let's say an error does happen here. I'm just going to wait. We'll make this async as well. I'm going to wait, let's say 3 seconds or something, and then we'll continue and try again. So we'll also pass in our stopping token there. Okay, so the thing that we actually want to do is receive a message from that port. So we're just going to sit here and say result equals await client.receive async. And we just have to decode that message. It comes in as a the result has a buffer on it that I believe is a byte array. Resolve.
I think that's the Swedish version of resolved.
Yeah. So we have a buffer there, and in our case, it's just a simple string that's coming in. So I'm just going to say encoding dot ASCII dot get string. Here's my message, and now we have our message, but we need to put it somewhere so that we can display it on the pages when we actually render out pages. So I'm going to use a memory cache just for simplicity here. I'm just going to store that little message in memory cache so that we can access it from elsewhere. So the nice thing about these background services is that they also take part in everything that we would expect it to take part in as part of a Asp.NET Core thing. We can inject dependencies into there, so we can just inject the memory cache using constructor injection. And then I'm just going to say memory cache dot set. I'll call it UDP message, and I'll set the message there. So that's it for my background service. It's now created, and of course we would want to log that exception here so that we knew that it happened. And then the only other thing that we may want to do is override the dispose, which will get called on shutdown, and then I can say if client is not equal to null, client.dispose. So that creates the background service. Now we need to register it, and that's pretty easy to do. We just go over to our configure services method in the startup class, and we say services dot add hosted service, and give it the type. So UDP listener, and that's all we need to do. With that, ASP.NET Core will on startup start up a background thread that runs that UDP listener calling the execute async method. And because we have this while loop, it's just going to keep going as long as our app is running, and continue to listen for messages on that port. Just so that we can show it all working together, let's go over to our index page here, and we'll also inject the memory cache here. And we'll create a public string message property here that we're going to send over to the view. So on get, I'm going to say var message, string message, if memory cache dot try get value. So we look to see if that message is there, if there is a message in the memory cache, and if there is, we'll set the public property equal to the message that we found.
You declare that string inline now, huh?
Yeah, I always forget the syntax. Let's take a look at that.
Me too. I think it's just out string
var.
message, something like that. Yeah, maybe the other way around. I never used it either.
Oh, now we need to figure this out because we're
in
here. Inline out parameters, right?
That's not that bad.
It is.
It's just out and then string works, I think.
Out string.
Yeah, that should do it.
There we go. That is nice and clean. I like that a lot. I just always forget what the syntax is.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay, so here we're just going to display our message, model.message. Okay, so when we run this, we should get initially no message here because there's nothing in the memory cache yet until we've sent messages over. That's what we expect. Let's set a breakpoint now in our UDP listener. So this should, in theory, be started up. And if I send a message, I would expect it to pick up right here. So let's fire up console here with the Windows subsystem for Linux. We're going to do netcat-u. Localhost 9000, I believe, is the port we were listening on. And now I can just start sending it messages. And there you go, we got a message, tests. We're going to set it on the cache. And then we go back to waiting here for the next one. So if I come back and refresh that page, now it says tests. And
it's pretty slick.
Full of typos. There you go. So that's all there is to writing a background service. There's all kinds of use cases, I think, for this. You might be monitoring, looking for messages on a queue, or listening for or checking for a file to show up on disk somewhere. There's all kinds of things that you could be running in the background. And you know, they made it nice and easy to wire that up without having to think about a lot of the infrastructure of managing a thread and just figuring out how to keep it running. So I like that a lot. In the next episode, we'll take this a little bit, or a future episode, we'll take this kind of to the next step. It would be nice if we didn't have to refresh the page here to get the message, and we'll look at hooking up SignalR so that that background service can use SignalR to update all our connected clients in real time.
Sounds great. All right, well, thanks everybody for coming up and watching. Remember to, I don't know, do whatever the kids have you do on YouTube, like, comment, share, and possibly consume a spoonful of cinnamon. At least one of those things is ill-advised. If you're going to do 3 out of the 4 things, do the first 3.
Agreed.
And we'll see everybody in the next episode.
Bye.